I'm a big boy. Big boys have to stand for everything.
Can I sit?
You may sit. Big boys have to stand. Are we good? Are we good? All right. Well, good morning, and welcome to our first of many prayer and action days here at the Kentucky Capitol. Today we are in room 169 of the Capitol Annex as we come together to talk about voting rights and the restoration of rights for those who have been convicted of felonies. My name is Todd Smith. I am the chair of the Justice and Advocacy Commission for the Kentucky Council of Churches. And I am so glad that you have chosen to join us this morning, whether in person or via live stream. Thank you so much for being with us. We here at the Justice and Advocacy Commission endeavor to be what we call ourselves, the conscience of the Commonwealth, bringing forward our Christian values that we have agreed upon unanimously as the Kentucky Council of Churches, and bringing those values here to Capitol Hill in order to lobby and to advocate for those that might not have someone advocating for them. So today, like I said, we are focusing on our call to seek justice and to seek restoration for people who have for a time been removed from society. And so now we join together in a time of learning and praying. And at the end of our time together, you will be given some actions that you can take to put your faith and your prayers into action. So let us begin our time, as we should, with prayer. Almighty and everlasting Father and Mother God, whose love fills us and whose grace perfects, we rejoice to know that we are your children. We rejoice to know that we are made in your image, and that we have never looked into a pair of eyes that you have not first. We acknowledge that your love for us is eternal and boundless, without merit or worthless. But we confess that our own flaws and imperfections often prevent us from extending the same love to our siblings, all of us, your children. Grant us, O Lord, the wisdom of your Spirit to always discern what is right, just, and merciful. Grant us, O Lord, the strength of your Spirit to never tire in being your hands and feet in service to you and our fellow human being. As we go forth as instruments of change, pursuing justice, mercy, restoration, and reconciliation, let us clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Amen. Now I'll turn you all over to Tip Moody as he brings the scripture for our time of reflection and devotion.
Good morning, y'all. We could not have a meeting on restoration without speaking about Micah 6:8. And Micah 6:8 has many, many translations. Some of them I like a lot. Some of them don't necessarily quite convey the meaning. But this is the one that I chose from the Message Bible. Interestingly, a lot of translations translate mercy into love and or kindness. And the nuance for me personally isn't quite the same. Nonetheless, Micah 6:8 from the Message Bible. But he's already made it plain how to live, what to do, what God is looking for in men and women. It's quite simple. Do what's fair and just to your neighbor. Be compassionate and loyal in your love. And don't take yourself too seriously. Take God seriously. And our passage from the Gospel, Luke 10:36 through 37. Which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, you go and do likewise.
In this well-known parable of the Good Samaritan, it calls our attention to our obligation to love our neighbor as ourselves. Jesus never established any restrictions or conditions in defining who our neighbor is. And so this is what prompted the lawyer speaking to Jesus to ask him, "Who is my neighbor?" All too often, laws are written with restrictions or conditions that exclude individuals or groups of people to protect the power and privilege of others. Laws are also written that prevent individuals and groups who are excluded from the ability to vote, and thereby it limits their ability to change those laws. In telling this parable, Jesus pointed out that a priest and a Levite, both of whom were responsible for caring for those that are suffering, walked by this man who had been stripped, beaten, and robbed, and left to die on the side of the road. And Jesus pointed out that it was a Samaritan who walked by on the road, noticed this man and his great suffering, and he went above and beyond to provide medical care, to a safe place to rest and heal, and mercy. And at that time, a Samaritan would have been considered an outsider, a foreigner, and yet he was the one to provide mercy by offering compassion and mercy. God created every human being in God's own image. God's love is unconditional. God's mercy is unconditional. Jesus, in his ministry, teaches us that mercy requires both compassion and action. The word compassion means to accompany someone who is suffering. And this is what the Good Samaritan did. And Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." This is also what the prophet Micah taught when he said that God expects us to do what is fair and just to our neighbor, to be compassionate, and to be loyal in our love. When we don't do this, the results can be harmful and even deadly for innocent people. If the Good Samaritan had not helped that man on the side of the road, he would have most likely died. Let us do what is fair and just for all our neighbors, without exception, and respond with mercy, compassion, and love. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen in the room and online. Sorry. I would like to introduce you to a man that you might be familiar with, you might not be familiar with. This is Marcus Jackson, Director of Advocacy based on lived experience. He is technically, yes, he's my boss. We are going to give you some brief highlights about voting rights restoration in the Commonwealth. But before we get into the details of the issue, Marcus is going to give us an update on where we stand legislatively in this moment.
Thank you. Currently, we are waiting for a Senate bill to actually be filed during the 2024 session. The sponsor, right, we have spoken with, name is Senator Brandon Storm. We believe that he's going to file the exact same piece of legislation that he filed last year, which would have who individuals' rights would be restored after completion of sentence and a 3-year waiting period, is what things are looking like now. It's not, it could be better. The thing is, that's where we're at today. And we've been working in 14 of the 38 Senate districts to try to gain support around the restoration of voting rights as an organization. We believe that our numbers are around 20 of the 38 senators that actually support the restoration of voting rights right now. So if everything goes according to plan, then it would move through the Senate this year. Once it's filed, we believe we have the votes. So it will come out of the committee and actually go over to the House. We have a lot of work to do within the House, though. We have 100 representatives. We've been able to speak to 53 of those 100 representatives. And we believe that the support is there. But but we still have to have those conversations. There's a lot of constituents that we're going to need to have conversations with their elected officials to actually let them know this is something that is needed and is wanted in their community, because we elect our elected officials. They listen to what we want. But if we're not saying anything, if we're not telling them that this is something that we support, then more than likely they will stay away from it. So we have to have that active voice. So we're waiting for the bill to be actually filed. As soon as it is, we're going to celebrate that small victory of actually having that bill filed by Senator Storm, and we'll continue to do the work. So thank you all.
And I want to reiterate the most important thing that Mark has said, and that it is with our support as constituents to go out and lobby our legislators, both our representatives and our senators. And the Commonwealth is one of those funny places that we do not have citizen-led referenda. We cannot initiate anything on our own. So we are doubly stymied by the fact that the legislature has to pass something to put on the ballot to amend the Constitution, and then we have to actually vote to amend it.
Right.
Luckily for us, it's only 50% plus one, unlike some other states where the percentage is higher. Kent, I might go out of line. It might be helpful to know that the amendment that disenfranchises Marcus and myself for any felony was created in 1891 as a result of the 15th Amendment. We couldn't allow anyone to be disallowed to vote because of race, so they just figured out a way to work around that. Current law, we have an executive order signed by Governor Beshear that restored voting rights to a very small group of men and women with low-level felony offenses. I benefited from that executive order. My brother from another mother here did not. And it gets back to the question of why was I worthy and Marcus was considered unworthy. And I think that is an issue that we as an Assembly of Faith need to address very strongly going forward. Interesting. Kentuckians' opinions. 4 in 10 Kentuckians know someone with a felony conviction. And if you didn't know anyone with a felony conviction before, you do now.
No. You would not believe how much.
And a legal women voters poll done last year said that by a 2-to-1 margin, 67% of people in the Commonwealth that was polled support the restoration of the voting rights. And more interestingly, a cohort of Republican primary voters, these are die-hard Republicans in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, 70% of them want to be able to vote on this issue. Now, 53% said that they would vote for it. But the fact is, people want the ability to be able to vote on this issue and decide for ourselves. What's the solution to all this?
The solution to all of this is to actually have a constitutional amendment. We have to change our Constitution. And what that's going to take is, as I spoke on earlier, 60% majority in the House, in the Senate, followed by a 60% majority in the House, and then last but not least, placed upon the ballot for the citizens of Kentucky to actually vote in favor of. It seems like a tall order. It is not. And one of the things that I really want to highlight and point out the importance of the restoration of voting rights. It's more than a vote. Okay? As Brother Tip said earlier, I do not have the right to vote. I remain disenfranchised after the completion of my sentence and everything like that. However, I have been extremely blessed. I am not an exception. Okay? I am no different than anyone else. I am what opportunity looks like. I was provided opportunities through the Louisville Urban League before I came out of prison and provided a job. It wasn't about money. It was about the way that it made me feel like I belonged again. It was that sense of belonging that kept me here. and to the ACLU, where that sense of belonging further empowered me, and some doors were open where I could build relationships with people that I didn't feel like I was a horrible person anymore, or that I was limited to doing anything. It made me want to stay in the workforce. It made me want to have that job. It made me want to take care of my family in a way that was more productive than ever before in my life, because this was my final shot. And this is something that our government officials can give us that doesn't cost one penny. It doesn't cost a penny, and the benefits are so high. And then there's another great, wonderful thing that comes along with restoration of voting rights. The more I'm connected to my community, the less harm that I am going to do in my community. I show up at things now that I had never imagined showing up before. And it matters. If we truly want safer communities, we cannot continue to disenfranchise and disassociate people and disconnect them from lives.
That's right.
We have to give people an opportunity to come in, be a part of our family. No one's perfect. People make mistakes. It's how do we handle those people after that mistake? Would I rather bring you in closer to me and love on you and give you some type of hope and for you to be able to excel? Yes, we want all people to excel. This is one way of doing it for free. They give us 1,000 programs while we're on the inside that cost taxpayers thousands of dollars for a chance at rehabilitation. The recidivism rate prior to Governor Beshear's executive order was right around 41, 42%. And that's with all these amazing programs that you give us while we're inside. The programs help. The programs don't make you feel like you belong. Since the restoration of voting rights, we know now since 2019, when Governor Beshear issued his executive order, he reported in July of 2023 that we had the lowest recidivism rate in our history at less than 27%.
After 27?
27% is where we're at now. What they don't know and what people with lived experience that we've been through, what we know is like, we made a mistake. We don't want to continue to make mistakes. We just want an opportunity to prove that we are better than that mistake. And we're not going to squander it again. So thank you all.
And I would like to add one thing to what Marcus has said, that sometimes we overlook, and I say we, not just as a community and people of faith, but society writ large, that yes, having that restoration of voting rights does go back to elevating our self-esteem, our self-worth, our engagement with our community. But there is one more step that we don't talk about, and that is personal reconciliation. How do we, as people of faith in our communities, reach out to someone like Marcus and myself, reconcile us regardless of our past, to you, to our community, to our church family? I mean, there is a responsibility here that we don't talk about. Now, it's up to the governor and the voters to actually restore our voting rights, but you bear some of that responsibility in reconciling us, welcoming us back with that faithful love into our communities to help us in that process.
Well, Marcus, Tip, thank you both so much. Don't run off just yet. We don't have any questions in the chat, but do we have any questions here amongst the faithful at the Capitol Annex this morning?
Yes. So you were saying it's a new word for me. So you have the recidivism. Is that what the 27%?
Recidivism rate.
Give me what is recidivism?
The rate of return back to incarceration.
Okay.
In Kentucky, we have a 3-year recidivism rate. So based on 3 year, a person being returned to reincarcerated within 3 years. So that can either be for a technical violation, a parole violation that sent you back to prison, or a new conviction.
Okay.
That's what recidivism.
And correct me if I'm wrong, those numbers that you went over from the 40% down to the 27, that went from above the national average to below the national average.
Exactly.
Which is huge.
Huge.
Especially for Kentucky.
Yes.
So that, do you have any more questions? It's amazing stuff.
I do have a question.
Thank you.
So, there's a lot I don't know about all this, but if a person was a felon and they died, how do you get that taken care of? Will this apply to any of that? Like to expunge their record? Will this have anything to do with that?
Well, a person who's passed away doesn't have, we're talking about today. Questions like that, I have a number that I can get you in contact with. We'll talk about talk after.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Yes.
I have a senator and a representative who are always out with me on these issues. I mean, they're already working on these things. But when I use legislative message line, I usually ask, if it's something like this, for it to go to all senators or all representatives. Is that effective? I'm not their constituent. Well, I am, because two of them. But.
Exactly. So it's really up. The thing is, your legislator is still going to receive it, even if you click off. The thing is, yes, more people need to know.
Well, you can make an appointment because you're here often enough, you know them well enough that you can bring people with you, sit down and talk to them about it. And remind them that, yes, you have the ability to return them to office.
And also remember that when you call the 1-800 number to the RC, you're also able to leave a message for the members of a committee or the chairs of a committee. And so this bill is going to be going before the Judiciary Committee, correct? No. Oh, excuse me.
It will be local government, and in the House, it's I want to say it's local government, and then you have the Constitutional Committee on the other side.
The Committee on Constitutional Amendments.
Yes, that's on.
Could you share the bill number again so that people?
We don't know.
There is.
You still don't have it
yet.
No. Yeah. Okay.
So we should wait and call after it's been filed.
Once you have a bill number, then you'd be able to call the Committee on Constitutional Amendments, and that would be one of your big ones to get a hold of because we need it out of committee and to the floor to be voted.
Right.
And we have postcards downstairs underneath the stairwell at the front of the building that you can fill out. We will address them, stamp them, and send them to your legislator.
Yes.
Great. Do you have any other questions?
Do you have like a form letter or something? Because I know people that are probably not really that good at writing that would like to do some of this.
I think there's a form letter on the back of your postcard, isn't there?
Yeah, there's
Yes.
a message.
So we have that, and we can get you in touch with Abel. There you go.
Email me and I can help you write something.
Thank you.
And another thing that would be extremely helpful is we're trying to bring in all the local chambers. So if you have relationships with any local chamber of commerce, we have a form letter that we want to also sign because it's very important for us to let people understand the impact that it has on our workforce here in Kentucky. It's a huge return on our workforce is getting people back to work. And our chamber should support such legislation that is going to strengthen our workforce.
I need one.
Yes.
So it's the Committee on Constitutional Amendment.
In the House.
Yes, in the House. And then the other one is
Committee on Local Government.
Yeah.
Something.
Committee on Local Government in the Senate.
Right.
That's where it was sent last session.
All right. Thank you. Do you have any other questions? Kent, I'm not able to see the chat from where I'm standing. Do you have any
We
questions
don't
in the
have
chat?
questions on chat. We're okay.
No questions in the chat. Any more questions here? All right. In that case, I will turn it back over to the Reverend Carol Ruthven. I hope I pronounced Ruthven. Excuse me. The Reverend Carol Ruthven and Tip Moody to lead us in prayer.
You can respond to each petition by saying, "So help us God." God of the marginalized, the disregarded, the overlooked, and the unheard, We give thanks for the noble vision of a commonwealth where all citizens are welcome as members of their community, where all citizens have a voice that is heard, and where all citizens can use their voice at the ballot. Help us make that vision of inclusion and acceptance a reality in Kentucky.
So help us God.
We confess our complicity in a history that has fallen far short of that vision. We realize that even in this very moment, we continue to fall short of that vision. Let us not forget the decades of struggle endured by women and the courageous sacrifices made by Black Americans that made their rights of citizenship a reality. Inspire in us the resolve to keep on keeping on in that same endeavor for those who remain disenfranchised and deemed unacceptable.
So help us God.
Lest we forget the hazards and prejudiced requirements that plagued people's attempts to register to vote in the past, and the procedural hurdles and unfounded allegations of fraud that we still face in the future. Instill in us a determination to make registration a birthright and not a bonus.
So help us God.
Lest we forget the difficulties some people encounter in casting their ballots due to statutes based on legal, racial, and social biases, let us stand against this oppression and voice our dissatisfaction loudly.
So help us God.
Lest we forget that Kentucky's lifetime felony disenfranchisement law is one of the harshest in our nation, and that only the permanent solution is amending our Commonwealth Constitution. Steel us to persist in the push to restore voting rights by letting Kentuckians decide the issue at the ballot box.
So help us God.
Lest we forget that race and class continue to unbalance the scales of justice, and that our system too often fails to focus on restorative justice, summon us to obey the prophetic call to both justice and mercy for our siblings with a criminal background, and to urge our elected representatives to do the same.
So help us God.
As we go forth to advocate mercy and restorative social justice, not just in this issue, but all those that lie before us, we ask that your love and grace be ever present in our thoughts, words, and our deeds. So help us
So
God.
help us God. So now we come to the time of acting in our Learn, Pray, Act Day. We have learned about the difficulties for those who've been convicted of felonies and had their rights taken away from them, and the possibility of those rights to be restored. We have prayed for our own ability to seek justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And so now we, the 11 denominations of the Kentucky Council of Churches, who have worked together since 1947, steel our faces towards that goal. And so we stand up together to go out and to do the work. If you're joining us via live stream today, you can call the LRC at 1-800-372-7181. If you call that number, you will get in touch with some very nice people who work at the switchboard. I promise you, if you call them every day, they are just as nice as they are on the first day of session, on the last day of session. They're wonderful people who do wonderful work, and they are always happy to take your message and to get it to where it needs to go. So you can call those folks and tell them that you want to speak, that you want your message to go to the chairs of the committees that we spoke about earlier, that you want your message to go to your senator and your representative, or that you want it to go to all of the House and all of the Senate. And however you wish for it to go, they will get it to those inboxes and make sure that your opinion is heard. So
I might remind them that you can call multiple times. You don't have to, if you have multiple issues, you can leave multiple messages, but you can also call if something changes. So if you called on Tuesday, you can also call on Wednesday.
yes, you can in fact call every day of session. Don't ask how I know, just know that you can. So you can call anytime that you need to make sure that your message gets heard. I do know that you can call multiple times a day. Once again, don't ask how I know. Just know that I do and use that information wisely. Now, if you're here with us in the room, you have another option to head up the stairs. Correct me if I'm wrong. The second floor is Senate. Sorry. Second floor is Senate. Third floor is House Republicans. Fourth floor is House Democrats. So if you know the party affiliation of your representative, then you know that you either need to go to the third floor if they're a Republican, the fourth floor if they're a Democrat, and whoever your senator is, regardless of party, they are on the second floor. If you need help navigating around the building, you can talk to either me or Kent or Tip if you're into talking to Tip. And we will gladly get you to where you need to be.
That means that I would want to talk to you.
Which can be a problem sometimes. Love you, buddy. Thank you so much for helping us out today. So if you're joining us via live stream, remember that phone number is 1-800-372-7181. A tip that Kent gave us last year that I think is wonderful and we should all do is put that as a speed dial in your phone. Save it. If you're like me and you have too many contacts, save it as LRC, and you'll know exactly what that means and how to get a hold of people. If you're here in the room, here in just a moment, we are going to pray, and then we're going to head out to go and act. And then at 12 o'clock, if you don't have anything else to do, the House and Senate are both gaveling in at 12. They're gaveling in at 2, so we got a little bit of extra time. But if you want to come and eat lunch downstairs at noon, we will eat. And then if you still haven't been able to catch your senator or representative, you'll have a little bit of time after lunch to go and try to catch them again. So that should give us plenty of time. Do we have any questions from the chat or here in the room before we head out? No questions from the chat. Anything from the room?
Mention the alert network.
Yes, thank you. This is the downside of having a new chair for the Justice and Advocacy Commission. I am still learning everything. So if you are joining us here in the room or via the live stream, make sure that you sign up for the alert network so that you can get the emails that we send out. It's on the screen. It is on your screen now. If you're joining us here in the room and want it on there, give your email to Kent because that's going to be more effective than giving it to me at the moment. I'm still learning how to make that alert network work. I'm going to be honest in my humility and say that I don't know it all yet, and I'm trying my best. That is a promise. I will keep trying my best until you all tell me to stop. So sign up for the alert network. It's either on the screen or you can give Kent or me your email, and we will make sure that you get into the email list and get our emails as we send them out throughout the legislative session. You will be getting emails about this issue and a number of issues that we are keeping our eyes on throughout the legislative session. All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. It is truly glorious when God's people come together, and it is truly wonderful when we remember that God has showed us what to do. He has told us, O human ones, what the Lord requireth of us, and what is required, but to seek justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. All right, and now we're our closing prayer. I'm going to turn it back over to Tip.
In addition, we have one great commandment that comes to us from the Gospels, and let us close in prayer, remembering that commandment. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God.
And he who loves is born of God and knows God, for God is love.
If God so loved us that he became flesh and lived as we do,
we must also love one another.
This commandment we have received from him,
that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves. Let it be so. Amen.